Rais wa tano, Raila Amolo Odinga. Makofi ya wananchi wa Kenya. Vigelegele simama.
I feel very, very delighted to come here on this ground where Makasembo Estate used to stand to launch a new project here, funded by Love Fund. Behind me is the Kaloleni Estate, and sisi ni watu wa Kale. This is the place where I was brought up. I spent my youth in the estate just behind here. This used to be an open ground where we used to move around with animals, cows. We used to herd our cows here, taking them down to the river Kachok for watering, then back. In those days, the municipality allowed people to keep animals within the estate here. So at the head of Kaloleni Estate there was a place, the cow shed, where the cows used to be kept there. My uncle had several cows there, and there were also some Somalis who also had cows there. In those days, Kisumu was like a small village. There were no other estates here like what you call Lumumba, Anderson, Undiek. All those were unbuilt, were not there. All this was just an open ground. Arugin Skodek. From Kaloleni Estate, you walked all the way up to the market and the police station. And then you passed the police station, you got to the St. Stephen's Church, which was our school. That's where we used to go to school. But here there was a Sisal estate where the stadium is. This is where we used to come to come here and move the Sisal. The Sisal which we cleaned and took to school for making ropes, as was required in those days. So from Kaloleni, there was just Nyalenda Estate there. Then there was Nubian Estate this other side. Then there was Manyata, that side, plus Manyata Gonda. So I've seen Kisumu grow and be what it is today. Makasembo Estate was built later. The stadium was next to the market up there. Stadium was transferred here in the mid-50s, down here. And the market was there where it is today. Now what is being done here is something that should have been done earlier. Because yesterday we were talking about rural-urban migration. And rural-urban migration is a permanent phenomena in development of countries. In Europe, they handled it well after the advent of Industrial Revolution. They managed to move people into proper settlements and constructed modern apartments so that people now live very healthily, people can do their work and also have places of pleasure. In our country here, during colonialism, the colonial government came up with the proper urban planning. So if you go to our towns which were built in those days, Nakuru, Eldoret, Kakamega, Kisumu, Mombasa, Nairobi, there were estates which were constructed by the colonial government. Here in Kisumu, you had Shaurimoyo as an estate that was constructed in those days. But when we got independence, an idea developed here. When many people began to migrate from the rural areas into towns, that this was a temporary phenomenon that was going to recede. Even they came up with the policy called Rudi Mashambani. Even songs were coined. Mzee kasema Rudi Mashambani. Hakuna kazi. People went back to the rural areas, found nothing useful to do, and quickly migrated back into the towns. And because the government was not responding to the housing needs of the people, slums began to grow up. So slums continue to grow up, what the government then christened as informal settlements. People were putting up their own structures without any kind of planning because they were desperate for shelter. What has happened is we have now this sorry state of affairs in most of our towns. In Nairobi, nearly 60% of the population live in slums. You have Kibera, you have Mkuru Kwanjenga, you have Madare, you have Kawangware, and so on. This is also seen here in Kisumu. There is a shortage of housing, formal housing. This is something that needs to be arrested and reversed. So what is being done here today is basically responding to the needs of the large percentage of our people who have moved from rural areas and into the town as urbanization continues to escalate. So the government needs to respond to the housing needs. And here, we need to come up with proper planned development. You've got shelter, yes. But then within it, you must also have schools where children are going to go. You must have also health facilities for treatment of the people. You must also have recreational facilities and also leisure facilities like clubs where people would relax in the day. This really should be made a part and parcel of the government policy. That whenever you're putting up shelter, there must also be recreation, must also be education facilities, there must also be health facilities in the area. This I want to say. But by doing this kind of development, you're moving people from poverty to prosperity, because the values of the people will grow. This is how we are going to be able to increase our middle income as a country. Therefore, what is being done here is a positive way of doing it. But we have actually planned to do it differently. The government of President Uhuru Kenyatta tried to introduce a housing levy. It was a very good policy. A housing levy where the employee would be contributing 1.5%, the employer 1.5%, and that will go into a pool of a fund. And that fund can enable us to roll out massive housing development in our country. I've talked to the trade union, KOTU, which led the opposition to introduction of that law. And the leadership, Mr. Tulia, assured me they will cooperate with us as a Azimio government when we go into office later this year. And we are going to introduce this so we can be able to roll out massive housing development in our country. This will help us to deal with poverty also in the country. But if you go that route, then you can reduce it. You are telling me that some of these houses are going to cost 1.5 million. That is still too high. Many people cannot afford that. We want to bring it in hundreds of thousands of shillings. That is what is easily affordable by most of our poor people who are working. And it will be done without any form of discrimination, so that our people move away, because I've been telling them that we are fighting three major enemies of mankind: ignorance, poverty, and disease. So in this kind of housing development, you must do them with those three enemies in mind: ignorance, poverty, and disease. Ignorance, put a school there. Poverty, create employment opportunities around. Disease, have healthcare facilities also around the shelter. If we do this, we will be really responding to the needs of our people, moving them to prosperity. This is actually the policy aims and objectives of the Azimio government that is coming. Therefore, Yathurwa, Awaji Dholuo, Ved Maluka. Hello?
His Excellency is now receiving a gift from Love Fund, actually given by the Chair of the Board of Trustees, Mrs. Celestina Kiuluku, which is a watercolor painting of Usoma Beach along the shores of Lake Victoria right here in Kisumu County. Tumpigie makofi mazuri na asante sana kwa wazawadi hiyo.
Wenda wasipate za nyumba za bei kali. Kama za bei nyepesi wanajibu. Makofi tafadhali.